Okay, so I'm assuming you can all see and still hear me. Is that right?
Yes.
That sounds on. Yeah. Okay, so this SoulSpace was inspired really by Joe, who is here with us today from St. Ethelburgers, who is responsible for the refugee sort of program at St. Ethelburgers, and I think maybe Joe might say something about that at the end. Certainly that would be really good if you did, Joe. But Refugee Week is coming up very shortly, and so that's why we're looking at this particular theme. So quite a lot of what's happening will just flow from one thing to the next, and other things I will kind of give links and talk a bit. So there you go. The theme of this year's Refugee Week is "We Cannot Walk Alone," which yeah, it sounds like a song that's very close to my heart, really, as a Liverpudlian and a Liverpool supporter. But I like the tone of this particular way of putting it, really, because it puts a responsibility back on us. We cannot walk alone. We've discovered that sometimes in our lives, that as independent as we may be, and as much as we'd like to find our own way, we discover that we do need others. And it also raises the fact that we have to respond to that in others too. We have to be the person or the people who are walking alongside of those who need us.
Dave,
yeah,
thank you so much for that. Just to say, on your slide there is a color chart appearing on my screen which is overlaying your slide. I don't know whether I don't think you can. Yes, that one there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, thank you. And yeah, I think it will.
الرحلة من غير أمان ما فيهاش حاجات تفرح الحب يملى القلوب والخلق فيك تجرح خليك هنا عالشط خليك مع ناسك هما الايدين في الشدة وهيبقوا حراسك وهيبقوا حراسك Mawaya taribtu warbu agarta mawaya hatana halisiyo dibato dadki kama hawl yaraysto mut lagana chakwai kagar kakayanakay santu nafsas lakasa santu meta farrasat miyaydan wararkahayni يعني سبوه بالا يعني دليرو يليني يعني بوسو شيء تابوزا 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 أقول تسفايزو تابوزا 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 أقول تسفايزو Odok abnu biajitu biajala magasitu biafani upamnera tinakuta tuboyera biafane kubamnera tinakuta tuboyera si badala holi waye fa umati uqatay itay kicisayunka midweya si uraysa miyaydan wararka haynin miyaan isagoo hubaala miyaan dhalinyaroo helaynin miyaan hoos loogu sheegin miyaydan wararka haynin miyaan isagoo hubaala miyaan dhalinyaroo helaynin miyaan hoos loogu sheegin عبت سقي وقضيه جليل وات وانا بسقايه عبت سقي تزحفتيه جليل ات وثنا بسقايه عفتيه اوي حافقيه انت كيو حدقونا سقايه حاويه حاويه انت كيو حدقونا سقايه انت كيو حدقونا سقايه انت كيو حدقونا سقايه بيايدن وركهين بياني سقوه بالا بيان دليرو إليه بيان سلوشي بيايدن وركهين بياني سقوه بالا بيان دليرو إليه بيان سلوشي بيايدن وركهين بياني سقوه بالا بيان دليرو إليه بيان سلوشي بيايدن وركهين بياني سقوه بالا بيان دليرو إليه بيان سلوشي.
So I think that one of the big problems with the whole refugee thing is how easy it is to just live with a label, a refugee, and to see, you know, those awful images on our screens of the suffering of people trying to escape painful and dangerous situations. And so we see them almost as kind of passive recipients, when in fact, they are, of course, like everybody else. They're full-orbed human beings with, as we could see from that video, enormous talents. And so today, as well as acknowledging the fact that there are these tragic stories, what I'd like us to do is celebrate the people and the talents that they possess and the gift that they bring to those countries like our own, where sometimes they come to live. Refugee, of course, is a legal term. There is a definition to it. It becomes a coverall for a lot of things, really. But refugees are people who fled war, violence, conflict, or persecution, and have crossed an international border to find safety in another country. If people haven't crossed a border, then they technically are displaced people, which may not make any difference at all to their lives and what that means. But they often have had to flee with little more than the clothes on their backs, leaving behind homes, possessions, jobs, and loved ones. Refugees are defined and protected in international law. The 1951 Refugee Convention defines a refugee as someone who's unable or unwilling to return to their country of origin owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. But that's a technical definition. It's good to acknowledge it, to see it, but it's also good to move on to that, to begin to understand one another as people.
When you hear the word refugee, we all make our own assumptions. Sometimes we let our ignorance form an opinion for us, because unless it's getting a trim for a motive on Friday, we were never really taught to prioritize what happens across borders. It's funny how in such a connected world, it's easy to become so cordless. We're content to let the media inform us on how we should view other diasporas. With social media so influential in how we see the world, it's no coincidence that we become accustomed to some kind of filter influencing how we see others. I had a Skype call with a brother who'd lived in a refugee camp since he was 4.
As I was sitting in a refugee camp, I didn't know how the world outside the mine looks like. Opportunities was in a shadow. Couldn't see where my life is heading. But build the house was the toy I ever touched.
He learned to build his own house at a time I was still arranging Lego bricks. He arrived in America at the age of 20 and he learned to speak English. He speaks 4 different languages. And the whole conversation, the one he was most fluent in, was smiling. He wasn't lazy, uneducated. He didn't come to take our jobs or get rich. All he wanted was an opportunity. All he came for was an opportunity. An opportunity not to be judged for the conditions he had no control over. An opportunity not to take anyone's life, but to create his own. Who owns this world anyway? We put up barriers and create small booklets, which we then use to convince ourselves that we have the right to deny others the good fortune some of us were lucky enough to inherit, or the one we gained by merit. But the right to be treated like a fellow human being, that's all they ask for. Is that too much?
So, as I say, the word refugee is bandied about a great deal, but what does it mean? Well, you know, for a lot of people, it means foreigner, stranger, alien, maybe a scrounger, someone who comes here taking our jobs or putting a strain on our resources, on the NHS or whatever. For some, it may even suggest a possible enemy, someone to be suspicious of, a terrorist perhaps cloaked in the garb of an asylum seeker. Overwhelmingly, refugees, and certainly the ones that I have met and encountered, never wanted to leave their homes and countries. This was something that was forced upon them, and they had lives. They had lives before that, which they didn't necessarily want to leave at all. They had relationships, loved ones, skills, jobs, all of which in one way or another they bring with them in their hearts, if not physically. And so I think that it's important to be able to look other people, whether they have the label refugee or not, in the eye and recognize a mirror, that there is so much of ourselves in them and there's so much of them in us. I think at some point in our lives, most of us discover a refugee within. But as I say, they had a life before being a refugee, and that's something that is often overlooked or deliberately obliterated.
I'm dentist from Kabul. I'm mechanic. I study agriculture engineering.
Yeah, I was studying university.
What did you study?
Energy.
I'm engineer.
Shoe driver.
I work with British Army in Afghanistan. I was a cable guy. Job in the boutique and fashion, man and woman. Center Baghdad.
My life, it was good. I don't have economical problems. Just I have my life problem.
First, I have dignity in my country. This is first. Second, I have respect.
Our life was so lovely. We have everything in our city.
I feel more comfortable in my country. But because of war, I escaped.
But now we don't have anything because the war finished.
It's very difficult to live without family. Without family, you just like a lone tree. No one can help you. No one can care you.
Iraq problem. Iraq no good. The family in Iraq, no family, finish.
We try to forget what happened to us.
We try to do something to, make better. Just football or some hobbies.
We play cards, we play chess, we go to swim. We do, but just to make time goes. Just we want to finish the day. Nothing more, nothing less. But not to have fun because nothing will make us happy here.
We are just waiting for a bright day. We are waiting for a bright day. I know this is a night. It's a night. One day will become a bright day. And we are just waiting for a bright day.
Yeah, refugee is a label, isn't it? It's like so many labels that we have in our lives, in our world. And it's kind of convenient sometimes to have a label because it's a way of controlling something which otherwise may feel uncontrollable or uncertain. And so we make sense of the world, we make sense of ourselves and other people with labels. And, there's an understandable psychological reason for that. The problem is that it also is a form of person blindness, because once we have a label, then we don't need to go any further to delve into that person's life, to connect with them as fellow human beings, and to empathize and to feel their empathy toward us. Because, as I say, there are times when we all become displaced on the inside, lose the sense of who we are or where we are. I think really our experience of the pandemic has had quite a large element of that about it, hasn't it? When, some days it's been fine, and you just get on and deal with it. But in the darker days of our lockdown experiences this last year, sometimes it's been bloody disorientating. And I know, there are times when I've just felt broken, and there's times when I've just wept for no accountable reason, but that I somehow feel a bit lost. And so the pandemic has kind of brought into our consciousness something which is actually part of our lives often at other times. There are all sorts of experiences in life and relationships and circumstances that can make us feel displaced, to lose the sense of who we are, of where we fit in. I don't know, maybe you feel that way somewhat right now. So it's good to bring all of that into this space that we have here today. But I think so much of what this subject raises for us, which we're focusing on here in SoulSpace, is the kind of ability to open our eyes and see each other as human beings. This picture. This is a picture which has become an icon, which has actually shifted our consciousness as human beings. The moment that someone was able to look back and take a picture of our planet from the outside was always going to be a mind-shifting moment. And I always find it fascinating listening to astronauts who've been outside of our atmosphere and look back, and their comments. There's an enormous commonality amongst them of seeing the joy and wonder of this little colorful marble in the midst of everlasting darkness. And there's something so incredibly joyful and wonderful about that. But they also speak about the sense of its fragileness too, its smallness, and especially when they view the little green line surrounding it of the atmosphere and realize what we're doing to it. So it's been and still is an amazingly important image for us. And one of the astronauts who went to the moon, he made an interesting comment, because he said all their focus of attention was on the moon. It was on where they were going. And there was this kind of epiphanous moment, he said, when one of us turned around and looked back, and we turned the camera around and looked back. And he said, it may well be that that was the reason that we came here, to be able to have this vision, because it's a realization that we are one world, that there are no borders, not really, no politics from this perspective, just one world population. So all those things that trouble us and divide us and cause so much strife down here from space disappear. And I think this is an important thing when we're looking at this subject of refugees, you know, to realize that we are one humanity, one people. Actually, more than that, I think it's the realization that we're earthlings, not just human beings, but we're part of one earth family, one earth community. And so amongst us as human beings, we have our differences, and that's good. Differences are good. That's part of the rich diversity of life on earth. Different languages, how wonderful that we have all these diverse languages and cultures. And I think that as the world shrinks, and for all sorts of reasons, we overlap with each other and integrate with each other, integration must never mean the loss of identity, the loss of diversity, of all of this richness, but really more of an embracing and celebrating of those differences, different religious traditions. All of these things only add to the diversity of planet Earth. But at the end of the day, we are one family. And this is what Martin Luther King recognized back in the early 60s, when he said, we've inherited a large house, a great world house, in which we have to live together. Black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu, a family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. And so he spoke about a beloved community. This was what he was striving for, not for the tables to be turned and black to now dominate white, or for, you know, Westerners to be dominated by Easterners, but rather to recognize that we all dwell in one house and we need to become a beloved community. And I think that's not a bad description of what Jesus spoke about when he shared the passion of his life, which was this thing called the kingdom of God. It's a problematic turn of phrase because it's monarchical and patriarchal. Interestingly enough, the term kingdom in Aramaic, the language of Jesus, is actually a feminine term. So maybe it could be the queendom of God. But it's the content of what he envisaged, which is so precious and important, because I think the kingdom of God is a vision of a beloved community. John Dominic Crossan, a Jesus theologian, because he specializes academic work on the historical Jesus, he says that the kingdom of God is best thought of as a companionship of empowerment. Oh, I love that term, a companionship of empowerment. And empowerment is not a one-way street. It's about mutuality. And the kingdom is a place where we learn to live together, to belong together. And the language of integration is certainly problematic when it suggests the absorption of one culture into another, of one race or one religion into another. Empowerment means valuing and celebrating difference. Empowerment suggests a shift of consciousness that I think we all, to greater or lesser degrees, need. It suggests the cohabitation and companionship of difference in respect and friendship. And I think that we need spaces, safe places, where we can not try to obliterate the lines of difference, but where we can cross those lines, where we can enter each other's worlds and value, just as we go into each other's homes. And you don't go in and try to change everything to make it like your home, but we value and respect each other's homes, and we treat them with love. And so we need places where we can enter into each other's homes, as it were, to ignore labels and make friends despite our differences. And that's certainly how I see St. Ethelburga's Centre. I think that's what it's all about, providing a space where lines can be crossed, where we can enter into each other's spaces, emotionally and mentally, spiritually, as well as physically. This is a picture of the Haneen Women's Choir. As you can see, not all women. One outsider was allowed in as a musician. It's a female singing group that was founded 4 or 5 years ago now, I think, which performs traditional Syrian folk songs. And it's a branch of the Haneen Cultural Forum, which was founded in Turkey. It's a gathering point for refugees. And it's a group of people who have been forcibly displaced, particularly Syrian women, who decided to face their pain and suffering with intellectual and cultural empowerment. It provides its participants with support, as well as helping to preserve the Syrian heritage in a different context. And they say that the forum's main objective is to create vocal groups within the Syrian diaspora. The target group are women above the age of 50 with no prior musical experience, although they say the doors are open to all. And it's a project that helps to connect its members with their homeland whilst they're in exile and finding a different home. It's hoped that this bond will create a safe space from which these women can begin to build positive relations with their new environment. And the songs that they sing are performed in different languages, which mirror the various languages spoken in Syria, including Arabic, Kurdish, Turkmen, Syriac, Armenian, and others. And they make beautiful music.
ولا تكسروا ولا تكسروا خاطري وتندم عليا هلا عليا هلا عليا
goodness. That looks a whole lot of fun, doesn't it? Beautiful, beautiful faces, beautiful people. I can't even begin to imagine actually how hard it is to find yourself in a totally different land, a totally different culture, and have to find a new life there. And some people just show such incredible resilience. And I was really impressed by this one woman called Lara, who's a Syrian woman who is a refugee in Jordan. And well, I'll let her tell you the story. Sorry about that.
هذا قرار جدا صعب لما انت عم تفكر تترك كل شيء، احلامك، رفقاتك، ناسك، اهلك، قرايبينك. انت عم تترك كل شيء 30 او ثمرت 34 35 سنه وعم تترك تطلع، هذا اكيد هذا الشيء مو سهل. ما بنعرف لامتى حنخلص او امتى حنرجع على بلادنا، فليش ما نكون نحن منتجين فاعلين ببلد اللجوء؟ أول ما تعرفنا على الشعب الأردني واختلطنا ونزلنا على الشوارع وصرنا نتعرف على ناس، حسيت إنه ما في شيء كتير بعيد عن سوريا، عن طبيعة الحياة هنيك، طبيعة الجو، طبيعة الناس، العادات والتقاليد. مؤسسة جاسمين لما بلشنا فيها بال 2014 لغاية هذا اليوم قدرت تكون وطن صغير في الأردن عم يجمع كل هاي الناس اللي كانت بسوريا وتغربت، صارت نقطة وصل بين السوريات والأردنيات والفلسطينيات والعراقيات لمختلف الجنسيات، عملت مزج. لما عملنا هذا الدمج طلعنا بأفكار رائعة، عملنا بازارات ضخمة لفتت نظر منظمات أجنبية عالمية لروعة المنتجات اللي عم تطلع من المؤسسة. نحن كسوريين في عنا مهارات، في عنا أفكار، في عنا إبداعات بنقدر نحن نستغلها لحتى نعيل أنفسنا ونكون معيل ببلد اللجوء اللي نحن فيه، وليس عالي، نكون نحن مفيدين.
One of my favorite occasions in St. Luke's, the church where I was vicar for nearly 20 years, was Maundy Thursday in Holy Week, when we had a meal that was a kind of remembrance of the Last Supper. And it was one of the highlights to me to organize this Last Supper style meal for the church community, which culminated in an informal table communion. But at my very last Maundy Thursday at St. Luke's, 2 Syrian cooks, a husband and wife team, spent 3 days preparing our meal, a meal for 80 people, and 3 children helped them in serving the meal. And it was the highlight of all those wonderful Maundy Thursday evenings for me. Mohammed and Fatima were refugees from their village near Aleppo in Syria, where their home was destroyed. Mohammed's back was injured and would never be the same after being hit by shrapnel. But they were just so happy to get to the UK, to be in London with their children. And the Middle Eastern meal, which they created, was spectacular. And afterwards, the couple shared a few words with us, and they spoke movingly about the welcome that they'd found in London and how amazing it was to just feel safe. And lots of people don't feel safe in London, but for them, it was a very safe place compared with where they had left behind. And it was heartbreaking to hear Fatima telling us that not all Muslims are terrorists. I mean, it just felt such a tragic thing that she had to say that she felt she had to say it. It just kind of speaks volumes in itself. So I think, you know, looking at Lara in that last film and thinking about Mohammed and Fatima as examples of so many people who bring so much talent and skill, but also bring love and companionship and friendship to the new host countries where they find themselves. And not a lot of people realize, but we actually have a lot fewer refugees in this country than some people seem to think. You know, to listen to some people, you think we're being overrun. But in fact, we're really way down the list of countries in terms of people that we welcome here. But we do have lovely people, and you know, some of them have gone through this last period with us during the pandemic, and there are 4 stories here of refugees in the UK.
I am from Syria, from Damascus. I was imprisoned twice by the regime, and I had to flee as a result of that.
I'm from Bangladesh. I'm being recognized as a victim of modern day slavery and trafficking inside the UK, and also my asylum claim is still going on.
The war started in Syria, so it was impossible to move back.
I come from a country where being gay is still not acceptable. One of the main reasons I have stayed here is because I was raped at the age of 11 by my next door neighbor. So going back is like going back to a lot of pain and a lot of a trauma.
I was desperate to help. I signed up to volunteer for the NHS, which is the National Health Service in England, in the UK. But because there are so many great people in this country, they got 750,000 requests, which resulted in them not being able to manage everyone. So I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to find a way in. So I found a job.
I have opened a little food bank, which is called MD's Little Food Bank. Being an asylum seeker myself, living on £5 a day. And this is the common scenario for all the asylum seekers who is living in the UK. During this pandemic, I felt that this is not really enough for a person to live. I don't take any money donations from people. All I take is the food donations from people.
So took in the job, went in very nervous, did an induction, received the training by the agency, and straight to the COVID wards. It's a hectic situation in the hospital. Everyone is on alert. It's physically and mentally demanding. I see people who are, sorry, I don't mean to get emotional, but it's difficult because I do see people suffering sometimes, and it hurts. It hurts to see people suffering.
And within 2 days, 48 hours, they will pass away. So people come to the hospital, I think late. They don't feel that they are sick. Anesthesiologists, they have the highest rate of risk that because they are very close to sick people with positive COVID.
I'm not working at the moment. I'm job seeking, and I have just launched a small fashion brand called Team Can. During the time I'm at home, I'm making masks and scrubs for the NHS. I'm having fun making them, which I have to be very careful. I have found myself being up until 4 o'clock in the morning. I have said to some of my friends or my housemate, could you please just drag me off from the sewing machine? Like, say it's enough for today.
On the happy side of this is that I do see people getting discharged, and I see people getting back to their families. And I know how hard it is for them to be separated from their families, because I have been separated from my family for quite some time.
Then I have 2 children, my husband. They are proud of me, and I can see that they have some concerns. When I look at them, their eyes, they feel that I might catch the virus. I have some times when I get emotional I feel so sorry for people, also for relatives. They were calling to check on their husbands or wives in the ICU. So it's very hard to break bad news for them. We have to, adjust ourselves, our minds to the situation.
I have never done therapy before, but I said that for me to be able to do this, I need to be mentally strong. So on my week one, my very good friend, who is the founder of the Choose Love charity, the CEO, what I told you about, she's like, Hassan, I want to help, and I'm going to help by getting you a therapist. I'm lucky to have this. Not many frontline workers, especially cleaners and porters and security guards, are being provided mental health support.
But we also have to take care of the asylum people who are seeking asylum in the country. I went through the process. I knew the pain and the feeling of how it was not having food and having money for my bus pass or for my phone bill. So therefore, I thought, if I could give something to them right now, what could I give? I can't financially support them. I said, you know what, I'm going to start a little something where if I manage to get people to donate £10 per mask, they get a mask and then we can give a mask to an asylum seeker. But we're also asking people, if they want to donate and you don't have £10, if you want to donate £1, donate £1, it's absolutely fine, because that every little helps. So far, I've made about 100 and we've sold about 40. So which means we've given away about 40. And the sequence, which is like the most famous, literally the famous one, and it's actually been the one that people have been donating and wanting to purchase the most. It's perfect for attention seekers.
Just going on my bike to drop a family pack to a vulnerable family. She's struggling a lot, but yeah, let's go. This bag is quite heavy.
My colleagues are from Nigeria, they are from Ghana, they are from the Caribbean, they're Syrians, they're from Spain, they're from the Philippines and China, and they're British, and they are all fighting the same fight.
When healthcare professionals get sick, they are in the worst zone. Doctors, nurses, all the paramedics should protect themselves first, and then they will be able to protect others.
So we have different beds, and every bed, there is an area for the bed. You mop around the bed, and then you take that mop and you throw it away, and then you use another mop. It's a very sophisticated process. And when I say I received the training, some people mocked me on social media. I was like, oh yeah, as if cleaning needs training. I was like, this actually needs training. Like this, we are not just cleaners. Your job is to protect the patients and the NHS staff. I genuinely think after this is done, internationally, we should have a discussion about how we treat our working class.
I'm happy with this work because with these people, I'm doing something to help them.
The personal feeling after I've made that 10 first scrub sets, folded, ironed, and I put it in the bag. Oh my God, it was just incredible.
I feel that I belong to this community. I know I'm an asylum seeker. My status has not been still granted.
Seeking refuge is my human right, but I wanted to pay back to the community. I feel I belong to this country now.
My message to any health professional coming from our area as a refugee, please don't give up and work hard. You can do it.
مهربان باش باشیم با هم از دل بخندیم هر دم شادمان باشیم با هم زندگی کنیم در Let's do this, it's our time. Let's do this, it's time to shine a light. Let's do this, it's time to shine your light. Whoa, whoa, it is time to shine your در زندگی تو زندگی سبوز باشه امیدوار اگر همدانه محبت ورزید دل را به کام هم دیگر بستید عشق و محبت سرمایه ماست در راه خدمت باشه همانگاه Let's do this, it's our time. Let's do this, it's time to shine a light. Let's do this, it's time to shine your light. بیا که تا چراغ محبت برافرازیم زندگی را با هم آسان بسازیم Let's do this, it's our time. Let's do this, it's time to shine a light. It's time to shine a light.
One of our greatest desires is the desire to belong. Somebody that came into earth and was never let belong anywhere could never receive their own identity. Because in order to feel who you are, you must first of all have a sense of belonging. And it's no wonder in nature that you see the nests and the lairs where animals dwell. Because even they, though their spirit is wild and is kin with the infinite, they still need places where they shelter and where intimacy can happen. So this is a blessing for belonging. May you listen to your longing to be free. May the frames of your belonging be generous enough for your dreams. May you arise each day with the voice of blessing whispering in your heart. May you find a harmony between your soul and your life. May the sanctuary of your soul never become haunted. May you know the eternal longing that lives at the heart of time. May there be kindness in your gaze when you look within. And may you never place walls between the light and yourself. And may you allow the wild beauty of the invisible world to gather you, mind you, and embrace you in belonging.
Wonderful, John O'Donoghue. So we're going to finish by lighting a candle. If you have one handy, then this is when you should take hold of it. And let's light a candle for refugees, for displaced people who are trying to find a safe place, to find a home where they can not only belong, but where they can bring all the richness of who they are to bless those who are around them in this new space. But let's light a candle also for all who feel displaced within. And perhaps that might be you, as I say right now. but for people who are struggling with a sense of belonging, perhaps through loneliness or through circumstances in their lives. These are the words of the prophet Micah, who prophesied in the 8th century, denouncing a lot of corruption in high places and social injustice, but he also foresaw a time of restoration for the exiles of Israel who would return to their homeland, to a place of belonging. But it speaks loudly to something within all of us, that we all need that place where we can sit and belong and work and offer something and see the fruit of our labor. And I think that's really what all people labeled refugees and all the rest of us long for. So let's our candles now. May the blessing of God, the eternal goodwill of God, the shalom and salam of God, the wildness and warmth of God be among us and between us, and embrace all those who are looking for somewhere to belong. Amen.